WRIGHT, Homeless News and Housing Policy, the right way. Hello and welcome to the Wright Report Week in Review. On the Week in Review here at the Wright Report, we bring you weekly headline reports of homeless news and housing policy in the Denver metro area, and some occasional national items as well. The Week in Review consists of reading local headlines in my fancy sponsor announcer's voice, followed by a quick summary of the contents and perhaps a comment from me, your host, Benjamin Wright. That's WRIGHT. In addition to the Week in Review, we hope to also provide some in-depth reports on various news items as time and technology and, well, whatever talent I might happen to have allows. To find other episodes, visit us on YouTube at The Wright Report. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We at the Wright Report want you to be better informed by reviewing the news coverage of homelessness and housing policy, paying attention to how the coverage is framed, who framed it, hence the commentary, and with a little luck, have some fun along the way. So let's get it right with the Wright Report. That's WRIGHT. Source article available. Short-term rental owners, advocates rally against heavy-handed regulation from lawmakers after several years of work to combat state legislation that would increase regulations and taxation on short-term rentals. Owners are actively lobbying policymakers. Colorado is the birthplace of short-term rentals. Oh, really? Well, color me surprised. And the state is ground zero for local regulation of the booming industry. After several years of reactive, defensive responses to increased regulation and taxation legislation, the state's short-term rental owners and managers are organizing with an educational campaign and lawmaker lobbying plans. Commentary. The institutional industry that's been taking advantage of communities for years is organizing to keep those communities from protecting themselves. Let's see how it goes. Colorado House Speaker Julie McCluskey, a Democrat from Dillon, earlier this month warned that short-term rental legislation is highly likely in either the special session or in next year's session. We know that short-term rentals have become a significant part of the guest experience, she said at a rally of short-term rental owners, managers, and representatives from VRBO in Silverthorne last week. In order for our tourism and economic to thrive, we need short-term rentals in places where the world wants to be. Commentary. With no regard to what it does to the cost of housing for the people that actually live there. She's not speaking on behalf of the people that live in Dillon. She's speaking on behalf of the people who are invested in properties in Dillon. Let's get back to the article. With no short-term rental legislation in this week's special session, where lawmakers hammered out a plan for property tax relief, it does feel like we've dodged a bullet, said Julie Kloster, the executive director of the Colorado Lodging and Resort Alliance and the Summit Alliance on Vacation Managers. More commentary. They just keep going at it. So someone in the industry feels like they dodged a bullet. Basically, this means that they haven't been caught yet in their scheme or been made to pay for what they've been trying to pull off. Bracing themselves for the point when they can't get away with what they've been doing to those local communities up in the mountains for years. Property owners and short-term rental advocates are planning to lobby and court policymakers heading into next year's legislative session, hoping to stifle increased limitations on vacation rentals. More commentary. But what about the people who live there and don't own property? They still need to afford and pay for rent. Do they get to lobby? Or are they too damn poor to be able to drive down from Dillon, state their case versus the rich property owners who were able to hire staffers whose sole job it was to go down there and state the case of the property owners. Earlier this year, as the legislature debated Senate Bill 33, legislation that would have quadrupled property taxes on vacation rental homes, McCleskey fielded more than 2,000 emails from constituents in 1 week. The third-term representative said that she had never received so many emails. She urged the short-term rental advocates gathered inside the Silverthorne Pavilion earlier this month to reach out to lawmakers and share data, not just anecdotes, about vacation homes that rent to visitors. But what about the people who don't own property, who are renters there, the labor force there, the workers there? She's working for people who own property to give her the words to try and prevent them from being taxed at an appropriate rate to support the rest of their town who can't afford to live there. Short-term rentals are the new frontier for how we experience life. Commentary. No, short-term rentals are not the new experience for how we experience life. They're the frontier for how rich people experience life and how property owners try to profit off of them. The rest of us can't afford to live that lifestyle. This is a trick of framing to make wealthy activities seem like they're normal and routine when they're not. They're unusual, and they're not very accessible to the vast majority of the people. People are letting go of buying things, and they are embracing, "What happened to me yesterday?" she said. "How do we ensure that there are short-term rentals available? How do we find balance?" Commentary. How about instead of making sure that there are enough short-term rentals available, you make sure that there's enough housing for the people that live in that area that they can afford? Mountain communities are really struggling with their ability to have the people who work there, the ones that run the resorts and run the lifts and all the other kinds of stuff, to be able to afford to live in their towns, because the short-term rentals have raised the price of everything, pricing people that live there out of the market. I wonder how inflated those short-term rentals are, based on the use of pricing algorithms like RealPage, the one that just recently had a class action lawsuit put against it. I am sure the short-term property renting types are very interested to know when they can raise their prices and by how much, in order to make as much money as they possibly can. Balance is the top talking point for owners and managers who rely on vacationers renting private homes. Commentary. Balance is a false narrative. Remember who the word balance is coming from. It's coming from the owners and managers. It's not coming from the labor in the area. Is there any word on what the labor in the area says about these issues? People who don't own property, what do they think about all of this? It affects what they pay in rent. It affects the cost of whatever property they own, if they happen to own something. But no, the word of the property owners and the property managers is the one that is listened to, giving them far too much influence. The owners on Tuesday discussed the need for all owners to pay lodging taxes and comply with local legislations, as they lobbied local and state lawmakers to steer clear of what they called heavy-handed regulation. CU buys $3.5 million home for Boulder chancellor. The University of Colorado purchased a new home for the CU Boulder chancellor on Friday. The CU Foundation closed on the home for $3.75 million, which is located adjacent to the University Hill neighborhood and less than a mile from campus. Commentary. So they couldn't find anything less than $1 million? Just another instance where people are bragging about how big fancy houses are for the rich and powerful, and somehow we're supposed to all be ashamed that we don't have one just like them. The CU system and the CU Foundation determined, after careful consideration, to invest in property in Boulder just minutes from campus, providing the best use of resources to meet the immediate and long-term needs of the campus. CU spokesperson Jeff Howard wrote in an email. CU System Office, located in Denver, houses administrative departments that oversee all CU campuses. The CU Foundation manages and invests donations made to CU will not sell existing chancellor's residence at 3600 Cato Parkway because a large portion of the area where the house is located is expected to be utilized for the facility and staff for affordable housing. Commentary. So while the rest of the staff is going to get quote-unquote affordable housing, the chancellor is going to live in a $3.5 million home. Why can't they just put everybody in affordable housing? It is unwise to renovate a house that is, according to the CU Boulder Master Plan, likely to be torn down in the not-too-distant future, Howard wrote. Furthermore, this discussion is allowing the campus to begin exploring opportunities sooner for redevelopment of the Cato Parkway property. Commentary. Ugh. You know, this whole thing is horrible. Just horrible. Whoever the chancellor is probably already rich to begin with. They don't need to be having a $3.5 million home for them to live into, or they're probably rich enough they can buy one rather than have the school give one to them. The people who need homes bought for them, they're the ones that are going to pay for their residences in the affordable housing section whenever they build it. Just another example of rich people getting subsidized with poor people's money while the poor folks suffer. Okay, a little bit of aftermath from the special session of the legislature this summer. This election, dark money is blackmailing lawmakers. If we're not willing to work hard, if we're not willing to stand up to bullies, then this is bound to happen. This article originally appeared in the Lever. Now we're reporting it as it showed up in the Westward. Lever is apparently a reader-supported investigative news outlet. I've heard some of their stuff. It's good stuff. Oh, what's the guy's name over there? David Sirota. Yeah. This past week, Colorado state lawmakers gathered at the Capitol for an emergency effort to slash property taxes by hundreds of millions of dollars, cutting government funding for public schools. Commentary. People who actually need it. Healthcare. Commentary. People who actually need it. And other essential services. Commentary. Other services that people need. This wasn't a Republican-led endeavor. Colorado's Democratic governor called the special session of the Democratic-controlled legislature. Nor was it a matter of out-of-control state taxes, as the state already boasts an extremely low property tax rate. The legislation passed this May further reduced taxes by $1.3 billion. Instead, lawmakers say that they were forced to cut property taxes further, to keep measures introduced by a dark money group and a Colorado tycoon off the November ballot. If enacted, these measures would lead to far deeper property tax cuts, more than $2 billion a year.
Can you keep a secret?
Wise guy, huh?
Methinks the reason that these unnamed secret people went there to renegotiate was because they knew that their ballot initiative wasn't going to pass. They could just pay off the politicians enough, even though these measures were likely to lose, that they could get the tax cuts that they demanded and were going to get for themselves. So our politicians have no confidence in the general public seeing through these ruses?
What do you think?
And voting these state property taxes down? All you got to do is let the people know that this isn't for them, that it was for the rich business folks, tycoons, if you will. And here, the reporter could all help us out, calling out who that tycoon is. So they're mentioning things like dark money. Who's dark money? Colorado tycoon. Which one? All behind the scenes. Scary hush-hush stuff. These people have names, and they need to be reported, and reporters should be calling them out so we know who they are to help us understand what their interests are, because they're certainly not the same interests as the general public.
Now I've been serving time since my first day. Now I've been serving time since my first day.
It's a warning for the rest of the country. In effect, legislatures were engaging in negotiations with shadowy groups trying to hijack the state's ballot process, with the state itself being held hostage. Representatives, commentary unnamed representatives, I'll have you know, of the dark money groups, weren't in attendance at the Capitol meeting that the lawmakers were negotiating with political operatives they couldn't see. That's because the ones they could see were purchased by these dark money folks. Yes. And all who are bankrolled by donors who the law allows to hide their identity. Wait a minute. So the law allows them to hide their identity? Or does it require them? That's some sketchy language there. For me, it sounds like a whole lot of wash, rinse, repeat. Political leaders respond by sounding sympathetic to their constituents, but vote with the institutions that fund their political campaigns. Wash, rinse, repeat. Political leaders respond by sounding sympathetic to their constituents, but vote with the institutions that fund their political campaigns. Wash, rinse, repeat. Democrats at the Colorado Capitol have had enough of the ballot measure leverage dance. Ballot measures backed by wealthy interests promoted the governor and lawmakers to cut deals time and time again this year, most recently leading to the special session on property taxes earlier this month. Commentary. Before we even get going here, interesting how this outrageousness is coming after the rich folks got what they wanted legislatively. At this point, the rich folks don't care. They'll just wait for the tide to come in and the tide to go out. If proper investigative news reporting can get this stuff out, we don't have to unwillingly pass these ballot measures. But that would require for the news outlets to report this stuff and re-report this stuff and keep reminding us of what's going on. Oh, wait. Those same business interests own these politicians. Guess what else they own? The news outlets. So when you hear this stuff and it leaks out, you have to take note, because they're not going to have a follow-up article on this. They're going to squash it in the news cycle as fast as they can, and with as much distractions as they can offer to get you thinking about anything about what it is that they're doing to take advantage of you and your finances. You want to get a state lawmaker's attention? Well, that's easy. All you need is a few $1 million and an idea big enough to shake up Colorado policy landscape. Wash, rinse, repeat. Want to get a state lawmaker's attention? All you need is a few $1 million and a big idea enough to shake up Colorado's policy landscape. The special legislative session on property taxes that ended Thursday was the product of two wealthy groups that shelled out large sums to collect enough voter signatures to get a pair of measures on the statewide ballot. Initiative 108 would have cut property taxes by an estimated $2.4 billion starting in 2025 tax year, while Initiative 50 would have amended the state constitution to impose a 4% cap on future property tax revenue. The threat of those measures' possible effect on the state local finances, particularly K-12 schools and fire districts, was enough to force Governor Jared Polis and the legislature to the negotiating table. But while it was widely accepted that both initiatives faced unlikely odds of passing, imagine that, they were unlikely to pass, yet the politicians still sold out to the people. Don't they have any confidence in people keeping from bad legislation from passing? Democrats weren't willing to risk the long shot chance they might succeed. The special session and another $255 million in tax cuts moved forward, a deal which the measures would be removed from the ballot later this week. Ballot initiatives backed by wealthy interests, if money is freedom of speech, then they have the responsibility to be revealed, prompted the governor and lawmakers to cut deals time and time again. This year, there were also big compromises reached on the medical malpractice lawsuits and oil and gas policy to avoid costly ballot fights. "12 proposals make Denver's November ballot. Slaughterhouses, unions, and tax hikes. Oh my." We're just going to be focusing on the issues that affect housing policy here. Those things are the sales tax for affordable housing, $500 bond for Union Station, for all things for a billionaire and his businesses down there, and the creation of a new business improvement district, focusing on what kinds of housing that they're talking about being there. Mayoral proposals approved for the ballot by Denver City Council. Affordable housing sales tax increase. Mayor Mike Johnson's proposal cleared its final city council vote on August 19th. Calls for a 0.5% sales tax increase to fund the creation and preservation of affordable housing in Denver. If passed by voters, the measure would bring the city's current 8.81% sales tax up to 9.31%, generating around $100 million annually for affordable housing efforts. 9 out of the 13 council members voted in support of the measure. The 4 opponents criticized the proposal for lacking clarity on how the $100 million raised by the tax increase would be invested, and also attacked it for further increasing taxes for cost-burdened residents. "The shortage will only grow if we don't take action now," the mayor said in a statement. Commentary. The unfortunate reality is that even by taking action, the situation is going to continue to grow worse. But by taking action, it may grow a little less worse than it would have if it just stood pat. Let us continue. Denver cannot be a vibrant, inclusive city without ensuring that teachers, nurses, first responders, and seniors can continue to call Denver home. The housing created by the fund would serve households making between 0 and 100% of the area's median income, up to $91,280 for a single person. All right, here's a little discussion about average salaries here in Denver. According to Glassdoor, here's some average salaries in Denver according to Glassdoor. Teachers between 49 and 70,000, or an average of about 64K. Nurses from 92 to 130, or an average of about 111K. EMTs 42 to 120, or an average of about 80. Firemen 58 to 100, or about average of about 79K. Younger than 25 and those older than 65 earn less at 53,030 at about 53,000, and 55 at about $53,000 and nearly $56,000 respectively. But critics of the proposal say that making it more expensive to buy items in the city isn't the right way to address expensive housing. Of Denver voters, 35% say taxes are already way too high, and another 29% taxes are high but acceptable, according to data from the Colorado Polling Institute released on July 10th. If voters approve this and a Denver health tax increase already on the ballot, Denver sales tax will hit 9.65%, the highest sales tax rate in the eastern portion of the state, topped only by a handful of mountain towns. Denver Downtown Development Authority. Commentary. This is the one for billionaire Walter Eisenberg, someone who's already rich, and his businesses and his business buddies from around Union Station. That's on August 26th, Council approved an initiative proposed by Mayor Johnson, which seeks to increase the city's debt by $750 million for the Downtown Development Authority to use on public facilities, infrastructure, and other improvements. The proposal would not raise taxes, but would extend the duration and geographic range of the downtown Denver of the Downtown Development Authority that was created in 2008 to support projects that spur economic growth in the city, particularly at Union Station. How did we build Denver Union Station? How did we build Denver Union Station, this vibrant area where we, commentary, who's we? The privileged, the rich, the well-connected, and the elected? This vibrant area where we all want to go. It was through the Downtown Development Authority, Council President Amanda Sandoval said during a committee meeting. Here we are asking the electors if we can extend the Downtown Development Authority without raising taxes. Can we get improvements that we've all been wanting in downtown Denver? The plan does not identify specific projects that would be funded by the ballot measure. Those will be worked out this fall. Apparently that's good enough. But Sandoval spoke to her desire to see areas beyond the 16th Street Mall redeveloped, extending to the city and county building. Only voters within the existing Downtown Development Authority boundary are eligible to vote on this measure, approximately 2,500 people who live or own businesses around Union Station and Market Street Station. Commentary. I wonder if that includes people who both apply. Well, maybe it does, but maybe they only get one vote. And either one or both get you on the ballot. And the last one, Ballpark Improvement District. Unlike the other ballot measures on this list, this initiative will only appear for voters who live or own property in the ballpark neighborhood. The measure, approved by Denver City Council on July 8th, asks residents for permission to create a ballpark general improvement district, a GID, for the neighborhood around Coors Field. If passed, voters of the new GID would collect a special property tax from businesses and homeowners in the district to fund community improvements, specifically focusing on addressing public safety and homelessness. Numerous community members have spoken in support of the GID, including Candice Pineda, owner of Mexico City Lounge on Larimer Street. We want to keep our community safe, clean, and fun, she said. This GID is vital for our community to fill in the gaps where the city cannot. Opponents have raised concerns about the tax increases worsening financial hardships for the neighborhood residents. The initiative allows the GID to impose an annual property tax of up to $5 for every $1,000 of assessed value for each commercial and residential property in the district's boundaries. Foundation picks developer to build housing in Uptown. Karen McNeil never thought she'd be building apartments across from her nonprofits headquartered along the 18th Avenue in Uptown. It wasn't a planned project, said McNeil Miller, CEO and president of the Colorado Health Foundation. We just found out that the property across the street from us, Mountain States, across the street from us, Mountain States, was going to be for sale, and I went on our board and asked about buying it. The board, questioned by why the foundation, which spends millions annually on social, economic, and racial justice causes, would be getting into real estate speculation. Commentary. Are you serious? You would think that the people on the board of an institution like this would have an understanding of racial issues, of economic and racial justice issues combined together, that the number one issue about racial disparities has a lot to do with the redlining of housing and government funds 75 years ago when a lot of cities built out their suburbs. So you would think an opportunity to offer housing outside of that model, which was designed to exclude people of color, to offer it equitably, would be well within their wheelhouse, and that they'd be excited about it rather than questioning. We're not getting into that business, man. That should probably be your primary business focus, because it's the primary problem.
What do you think?
Let's get back to the article. I said we're not, but we know exactly what will go there if we don't buy it, McNeil Miller told Business Denver. There'll be 8 stories market rate condos or market rate apartments, and this is an opportunity for us perhaps to extend our vision and our strategy to bring it to life. Commentary. Way to go, McNeil. Housing affordability is one of our main priorities, particularly in the urban core. And commentary, and I would argue it needs to be the main priority. Or as Miller mentioned, you're just going to get more of the same stuff that continues to make us more poor and make housing more expensive and have less access to people who are poor. If you don't offer a different option, you're just going to get more of the same. So offering something different, right on. So in 2021, the foundation bought the land, approximately 2.3 acres between Pennsylvania and Logan Street for $25 million, or about $249 a foot. It's currently home to an office building that the Employers Council, formerly Mountain States Employers Council, once occupied. It will be demolished this month. Last month, the group unveiled its initial plans for the site. 3 buildings are planned. 2 will have income-restricted apartments reserved for those making between 30% and 80% of the area median income. Now, that's the kind of stuff that we should be building. Currently, we're only building 10% of developments at 80% or above. That's just more of the same. That's just more of the same and what got us here in the first place. Back to the article. The other structure is still to be determined. McNeil Miller and her teams are deliberating between some income-restricted condos or housing for seniors. The foundation has tapped income-restricted developer Gorman and Company as its developer. Kimball Krangle Gorman, Colorado's market president, said the 2 apartment buildings will likely have 160 to 200 units combined. Commentary. All right, let's think about best case scenario, 200 units for a purchase price of $25 million. That's $125,000 a unit just for the land. When you begin to pour concrete and frame the thing and then put in all the pipes and water and all that kind of stuff at $300,000 a door, you're looking at a total cost for the total investment to be around $60 million for the first 2 buildings alone. And that doesn't include what they're going to be doing with the 3rd building. But they're still trying to figure out what they should do. Senior center sounds great, but more of what they got planned, that sounds great too. It's all needed, that's for sure. Metro moves. Seattle firm buys first Denver property in Lohi for $40 million. Aspen One hires new CEO of hospitality division. Holland & Hart hires new partner for real estate practice. An apartment complex in Denver's Lower Highland neighborhood sold for $40.5 million. Seattle-based investment firm Timberline Partners announced Monday it bought 2828 Zuni, a 105 luxury apartment complex in Lohi. The apartment complex is the firm's first purchase in Denver, said Timberline Partners co-founder Dave Enslow in a press release. The investment firm has more than $1 billion in real estate across the West Coast, Mountain West, according to Timberlane Partners, and Enslow said the firm plans to expand more across the Denver metro area. Its portfolio includes apartment complexes in Washington, Texas, California, and Utah. Commentary. We're not going to spend much time on this, but it's just an example of the way a lot of real estate goes. Outsider purchases in a new area, you can expect in a few months' time that there's going to be a significant rent increase. So the rest of this is pretty much gobbledygook. The important part of the article is this. Timberlane Partners plan to make significant enhancements to the complex. The release said, specifically in the common room and individual units. Commentary. By how much do you think they're eventually going to raise the rent on this complex? Note your expectations in the comments. And now closing out the special session tax bill, we have the article on the governor signing it. Colorado governor signs special session property tax bill. Conservatives remove measures from November ballot. The bipartisan measure, House Bill 1001, cuts property taxes modestly for residents and some businesses and puts limits on how fast they can grow in the future. Remember, as we frame this, this is how the governor is framing this. This is the same bill that these ballot initiatives that weren't likely to pass were used as leverage against the Colorado legislature and the governor in order for these businesses to get an additional property tax cut. But here's the governor's take on it. Declaring an end to Colorado's property tax wars, for now at least, Governor Polis on Wednesday signed into law a round of modest tax cuts passed during the August special legislative session to avoid the threat of far deeper cuts on the November ballot. In exchange, political groups Advance Colorado and Colorado Concern rescinded two ballot measures, Initiatives 108 and 50, which would have cut taxes by $2.4 billion, put strict limits on their growth, and jeopardized the state's ability to fund K-12 schools and other public services for years to come. This is really an example of bringing folks together who may not see eye to eye on every issue, Polis said in his office at the state capitol. Commentary, don't you believe it? The complaints all along the way about this special session was about how the agreements were made without the input of the vast majority of the members of the state legislature, let alone any input from their constituents of the representatives. Polis made a deal with a bunch of rich folks and then forced it on the rest of the legislature by forcing them to come to a vote on the agreement that he had made with his rich buddies and wants to play it off as if that we're working together. No, these were these rich landowners working on the people, and they got away with it. Legislative Democrats and local government officials across the state hope that this special session deal would bring an end to the years-long political tug-of-war over property taxes. Since voters repealed the tax-limiting Gallagher Amendment in 2020, taxes have climbed at historic rates due to rising home values. So the issue wasn't taxes in general, the issue was the cost of housing. And now housing values increase, the taxes increase as well, with the value of the property climbing. You don't lower taxes because the value of your property is climbing. The more appropriate response is to find ways to control inflation, overinflated property values, and how to keep new developments less expensive. That will keep the taxes down. But no, the people who are profiting off these increased values are now getting a tax cut. Those increases help the state fully fund K through 12 schools for the first time since the Great Recession, but squeezed household budgets while the state's cost of living has risen rapidly. True, the cost of living has increased rapidly. But what's the major cause? The cost of housing. So the answer isn't lower the taxes on housing, it should be to lower the cost of housing. So then the taxes are less. And then the people are more able to afford the housing. And then they're more available to afford other stuff. Framing on this is one style of manufactured consent. They're trying to manufacture the consent of the general public that this was a good thing and that they addressed it the right way. No, they addressed the wrong thing on behalf of the people who are greatly profiting through the overvalued property values. And then they're trying to sell it to you like, yeah, it's what we should have done. The legislature passed a number of temporary tax cuts to mitigate their rise in recent years, but it wasn't enough to satisfy conservative groups outside the Capitol. Conservative political nonprofit Advance Colorado and Colorado Concern, coalition of business executives. Now, what they mean by business executives is just the CEOs, because as we did in one of our earlier episodes, in order to be a member of Colorado Concern, you have to be a CEO, and then you can qualify to be a member of this particular organization. Vice president's not allowed, I guess. More commentary. So rich landowners threatened their legislator and got away with it. The ballot measures that they listed, according to what information I can find, weren't likely to pass anyway. So they traded these ballot measures that they put on the ballot that weren't likely to pass for one that they could get passed by threatening our legislature. And by threats, I don't mean physical threats. I mean campaign contributions. The majority of our legislatures at any level, whether it be municipal, federal, or state, are owned by rich landowners and business interests. There are some minor exceptions to that, but for the most part, most of these folks are owned. Wash, rinse, repeat. Political leaders respond by sounding sympathetic to their constituents, but vote with the institutions that fund their political campaigns. Wash, rinse, repeat. Political leaders respond by sounding sympathetic to their constituents, but vote with the institutions that fund their political campaigns. Wash, rinse, repeat. Political leaders respond by sounding sympathetic to their constituents, but vote with the institutions that fund their political campaigns. Wash, rinse, repeat. Homeless count lower than last year in Boulder County. Higher in Denver metro area. How do you think that happened? All right, before we get started on this one, if homelessness is up in the Denver metro area, yet it's down in Boulder, is it because they're housing their people better? Or are they just better at running people out of their city and quote-unquote sundowning them out of town? What do you think?
Hide the money, y'all! There's poor people around!
We interrupt this broadcast? We will interrupt this broadcast often to rant. There's a lot here, and we're going to get on it. Homelessness may have decreased slightly in Boulder County since last year, according to a recently released data from the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative. However, that same data suggests that homelessness is still increasing overall throughout the Denver metro area, as it has over the past few years. Commentary. So has Boulder built and put online more low-cost housing? More affordable housing? Have they built and put online more shelters to help people from having to sleep outside in the streets? Or have they just increased the intensity and frequency of their law enforcement to make sure that the homeless leave town? They don't care where you go. Across the country, growing numbers of people are losing their housing as Rising rents. Rents are rising in Boulder, I'll have you know. And inflation take their toll. According to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, a 2020 study indicated that for every $100 increase in median rent, homeless rates go up by 9%. Incomes are also not increasing enough to cover the soaring costs of living. For years, MDHI has conducted an annual point-in-time counts of how many people in Denver metro area, as well as each of the 7 counties in the MDHI's continuum of care, are experiencing homelessness on a single night in January. Each count offers a snapshot of homelessness at that moment in time. And though it can't provide a precise count of all the unhoused people in the region, it can help determine the general scope of homelessness in the area. This year, Boulder County, the count identified 727 people experiencing homelessness on the night of January 22nd, compared to 839 people on January 30th last year. This year's count was lower than last year's, which was the highest. But these numbers are not indicative of the Denver metro area as a whole. In January 2024, the point-in-time count showed that 9,977 people across the Denver metro area were experiencing homelessness, up from 9,065 last January, and 6,884 in January 2022. Those upward trends track with rising rates of homelessness across the country. MDIA say that comparing the point-in-time count data year over year doesn't always capture homelessness trends accurately. There are many variables that can skew each year's count, such as the weather, the methodology of the count, and the number of people who participate in doing the counting. Boulder County and county officials warned that there are some signs of hope. Homelessness remains a dire issue here. However, there do appear to be more people finding their way to housing. Do you have data that we can compare? How many found housing last year? Denver recently has been very vocal about announcing how many people they've housed. It's been far below the need, but based on the numbers that they're sharing, it's far more than they've done in the past. Back to the article. Whether through city or county programs, or through new housing that has recently been built. Again, about some data. It would be nice to believe you, but without the data, maybe you're doing something. But without the data, it's tough to believe you. Maybe you're doing something that works. If you'll share the data and share your progress, maybe we'll have a new model. Over in Douglas County, they're bragging that they just weren't offering any services. And lo and behold, over the past 2 years, homelessness decreased. Where do you think they ended up? Heidi Grove, the director of Homeless Systems and Coordinated Response Division of the Boulder County Housing Department, said as rental costs continue to rise, pandemic-era social safety net funding such as the American Rescue Plan Act dollars are vanishing. We don't have emergency rental assistance dollars like we did during COVID. These monies are gone, and so people are using that as supplemental gap funds. So those are no longer available. And so people are falling into evictions, he said. Commentary. So those people are falling to eviction, and yet they're not going homeless? Your numbers are going down. How did you manage to get your numbers down if more people are getting evicted? At a county level, the number of people enrolled in the Coordinated Entry Program has increased by 10% since last year, according to Grove. Coordinated Entry is the first program that unhoused people need to enroll in to access public homeless services and resources in Boulder County, Boulder and Longmont. Commentary. So the number of people applying for assistance as homeless people has gone up 10%, which is probably a lot less than those who actually went homeless. So how do you have less homeless people? The uptick in coordinated entry enrollments could suggest that more people are becoming unhoused, but also that more people are engaging with services that could. Commentary. Notice that there's no data to let us know how many people actually did find housing again. Back to the article. That could help them find housing again. Grove said people who have recently lost their housing are more likely to engage with services than people who have been unhoused for a while. The number of people finding their way into housing also currently sits at 27% of the number of people becoming homeless. The county usually averages around 30%. Commentary. Oh, wait. So the percentage of people who found their way into housing at 20%, at 27%, and the county usually averages 30, and they're claiming that the number of their homeless went down. I think you can see where I'm going here. But we're going to continue to follow this story that they're making up. In Boulder, exit from homelessness have gone down by about 1%. Commentary. Exits from homelessness have gone down about 1%, and homelessness hasn't increased. If you have less people getting out of homelessness, your homeless numbers are going to go up. But drops in the homeless exit ratio don't necessarily mean on their own that fewer people are exiting homelessness, Grove said. In fact, the number of people finding their way out of homelessness has increased. The number of new people seeking service have lowered the exit ratio. They're just wanting to distract you that the reason homelessness is going down was because they did something right, when in reality, it was all focused on law enforcement and sundowning and move-along orders. And yeah. I mean, Boulder's pretty notorious for aggressive move-along orders. You're talking how many people present seeking services. You're taking how many people present seeking services and then how many exited homelessness in the same given month, she said. And so, if you have more people seeking services with the same amount of people exiting, your exit ratio is going to drop. In Boulder, Annie Schulstis, a spokesperson for All Roads, formerly Boulder Shelter for the Homeless, said that even since the shelter expanded its overnight capacity from 160 to 180, and they have like 700-800 people experiencing homeless over there. He said that since the shelter expanded its overnight capacity from 160 to 180 back in July, it's still been overflowing. Of course, the capacity is going to continue to be overwhelmed. They mentioned earlier in the article that there were 727 homeless people in Boulder. So is it any wonder that if your shelter's capacity only goes from 160 to 180, that they're still going to be overwhelmed? Based on the numbers reporting, they could double the overnight capacity and they would still be overwhelmed. You're not talking about the need and comparing it to what you're offering. However, Schulstis said that since the shelter opened for daytime services in June, he has seen more unhoused people starting to participate in services. Could also mean there's more homeless people about to enter into those services. We're gradually increasing the number of people who are participating at the day center without having slept the night before. It's because they get run around the city by police officers who won't let them sleep. And a big barrier for us is always that the only people we're seeing are the ones who are able to sleep in that kind of setting. Now we're slowly but surely gaining that trust, which honestly is the primary reason for doing day services. In addition to new permanent supportive housing facilities, which offer support services for people transitioning out of homeless, we have created a significant amount of new housing. Commentary about some numbers. How much housing have you created? And a new facility is slated to open soon. Commentary, but that facility is not open yet, so that couldn't have lowered the number of homeless people in Boulder County. 40 people moved into housing in January alone. 40 people moved into housing in January alone, when the Bluebird facility opened in Boulder shortly before this year's point in time count, which may account for some of the reduced numbers in Boulder. Commentary. The Bluebird facility can house how many people? And the Bluebird facility can house how many people? For how long? Over what period of time and under what condition? Are these bunk beds? Is it a gymnasium? Do these people have a door that they can lock in a private room? And in the next 4 to 6 weeks, the Zinnia Permanent Supportive Housing Project is set to open in Longmont, which will provide another 55 housing units. Yay! But this is in Longmont, not Boulder. Is Longmont part of Boulder County? I don't know, not sure. Commentary. And once again, this is units that they don't have yet, so how did their current numbers go down? Anyway, you get the point. They're bragging about their numbers going down, but they haven't shown any data to show that they've made any progress. Homes in Denver are taking longer to sell, and they're more on the market. Inventory was up 56% in August compared to the year before, and sellers are making concession to woo buyers. The Denver housing market ended December as much as it began, sluggish. Homes are taking longer to sell, pushing up the number of houses waiting for a buyer, according to the Denver Metro Association of Realtors. Inventory was up 56% in August compared to the same time last year, the association said in its monthly update on the city housing market. People are looking to buy a home, are pulling back with interest rates stuck at the highest levels in decades. And it's not just Denver. High mortgage rates have put the brakes on hot housing markets across the U.S. Commentary. You don't get this kind of detailed and consistent coverage on how many people that were housed, but we get a lot of coverage on who is and isn't making money. Next effort seems to be, remember Joe from the last episode? Well, Denver Post is writing about the hotel that fired him. Apparently an effort to add some sentimentality to the place, if I could ever say it right. Worries mount over the fate of Denver's Grand Dame, the Brown Palace Hotel. It's all in a free fall now. Former employees say ownership has left historic Colorado Hotel vulnerable, but management says upgrades have been made. Yeah, upgrades that were made by a homeless man that was then fired and committed suicide. For decades, nothing optimized the highest tier of hospitality in Denver more than the Brown Palace Hotel and Spa. Served as the landing spot for U.S. presidents, celebrities when they came into town, and a gathering place for local movers and shakers cutting deals over power lunches at Ellington's, cocktails at the Ship Tavern, or cigars at the Churchill Bar. Generations of Colorados celebrated proms, weddings, honeymoons, there enjoyed holiday dinners together at its restaurants or sipped tea under the soaring atrium and their aunts and moms and grandmas. Like clockwork, every January, the hotel hosted auctions for top steers and selected for every January the hotel hosted auctions for the top tiers selected at the National Western Stock Show. Former employees, however, are worried that the iconic property is on a downward spiral under its current owner, Crescent Real Estate, LLC, and managed company HEI Hotels and Resorts. The hotel is dying a tragic, slow death. It's already well along in that process. It would be like walking into Grandma's house and seeing her with bruises and skinny and no food in the fridge, said Adrian Klee, a former bellman and consigliere who left the hotel in March. Well, we all know of at least one person who died a tragic death a lot sooner than the hotel did. For all we know, they might be half responsible for killing the man. By diminishing the guest experience and not adequately investing in the building, and by lacking long-term vision, Crescent will undercut the value of its investment, creating a lose-lose proposition for everyone, he warned. Commentary sounds a bit like they're treating their high-end customers like low-end renters out in the suburbs. Same leopard, same spots. Our interest here is less than a sad sack puff piece that they're writing about the Brown Palace, but to keep an eye on what it might be replaced by. If the Brown Palace dies, what an opportunity to have an existent building ready to be quickly converted into needed housing for the city. What's working? Colorado homeowners insurance increased nearly 60% in 5 years. Hail damage, wildfires, and weather are only partly to blame, says industry trade group. There's also social inflation, plus readers and inflation and hospitality careers and more. This article is on inflation in general, so we're going to keep it focused on housing. Link will be in the description if you want to read the whole thing. This may come as no surprise to homeowners, but the cost of Colorado's homeowners insurance is the 8th highest in the nation, according to Bankrate, a financial service company that tracks all sorts of monthly bills. Have an average of $266 per month, or nearly $3,200 a year. Premiums are higher here than in states such as California, $121, and New York, $144, as well as neighbors Arizona, $172, Utah, $104, New Mexico, $169, Wyoming, $131. Blame extreme weather, hail damage, and wildfires, or our lofty rank, said Shannon Martin, Bankrate's insurance analyst. Commentary. Notice the source. This is someone from the insurance industry justifying why the rates are going up. Is there a countervailing balance to suggest that they're overstating it? Or there might be other factors? Back to the article. Bankrate's insurance analyst and a licensed insurance agent. But diving a little deeper, Martin also cited how policies are structured by states and the rising cost of homes, and something called social inflation, a term used by the insurance industry to describe the impact beyond regular economic inflation. Commentary. Now we're getting to it. Social inflation, an undefined word to define whatever con they're using to increase the rates. That's the increase in lawsuits and the amount of payoff from lawsuits, Martin said. Public opinion has changed on who's really liable for these actions and how much money you should get in a lawsuit. It's impacting on how policies are rated and how much they cost. A 2023 analysis by the Colorado Division of Insurance found payouts have increased in recent years, causing insurers in Colorado to lose money on premiums they collected. Really? Notice there's no data on how much they normally make compared to how much they lost. Just following short of projected goals does not mean that you lost money. Why is it framed in such a way that they've lost money on the premiums they've collected? Like they have other income streams that they're not talking about in order to help us get a fuller picture of what's happening? About a little bit of concrete data. Like we collected $1 billion in premiums and paid out $1 billion. We can't keep doing that. That would make sense. But they give us no frame of reference for how much they're collecting in their premiums versus how much they're paying in claims.
Fun? You call that fun? That was boring.
Lower Downtown Designs Review Commission rejects El Chapultepec project plan. Heads back to the drawing board for the Montfort companies. Okay, so we've covered this on previous episodes of the Wright Report before. The main reason is to kind of get an idea of how crazy zoning codes can get. So, give you a little backstory. El Chapultepec it used to be a jazz bar, and it has quite the history in Denver, in the Lodo area, but they eventually went out of business. So they went out of business, and the building got sold, and then there was a new developer, and they wanted to tear down the building and do some other different kinds of stuff. But then some people who wanted to preserve the building because of its history got involved, and there was back and forth, and all of this zoning, you can't do this, yes, you can't do that, and they were trying to make it a historical building, and went back and forth, and apparently the developer and this historical building preservation group came to an agreement. After they came to agreement, the design review board, another layer, apparently has rejected their plan. So let's check in on the details. That win-win deal between Historic Denver and the owners of the El Chapultepec building at 1962 Market Street just hit a bump. In March, Historic Denver and two Denver residents, including a former city council rep, Elbra Wedgeworth, filed a non-owner application for historic designation of the structure that had housed the legendary jazz club before its current owner, the Montfort Companies, led by Executive Vice President Kenneth Montfort, son of the Rockies co-owner Charlie Montfort. Could demolish it, called for a draft plan for the corner by Coors Field. Oh yeah, that's another thing. This thing's like 2.5 blocks from Coors Field. The daughters of Jerry Kranz, who'd run the club until his death in 2012, had pulled the plug on the music at the club in December 2020, but El Chapultepec's legendary reputation remained. If somehow even survived a disastrous remodel by former beta owner Valentes Corleones, who leased the building before it was sold to the Montfort Companies. Historic Denver wanted to preserve that legend, as well as the composition of the corner that had boasted buildings that predated the 20th century. After considerable consultation between the two sides, on June 18th, Montfort and Historic Denver head John Deffenbaugh shared the news that they'd come up with a new concept. "We got a room, we planned next steps, launched a fact-finding mission," Montfort said. "We took time to seriously explore designs." They came up with a serious winner that preserves the triangular shape in the two walls of El Chapultepec, with a new glass building on the market that flows into a project that includes the renovated historic building on the 20th century houses of the Jiggling Grizzly and emphasizes its 130-year-old brick exterior. Their collaborative conclusion was submitted to the Lower Downtown Review Committee, along with this note from Montfort, which we're going to skip. But not so fast. Those plans were not approved at the September 5th Lower Downtown Design Review Commission meeting. While commission members praised the portion of the project involving 1962 Market Street, the roof terrace addition on the Giggling Grizzly was hit with criticism, as was the abundance of glass. Commentary. Just the whole saga. This is not unusual in dealing with properties in Denver. It becomes so complicated and takes so long, and there's so many review boards and there's so many influences. All of this delays our ability to build housing. All of this makes the whole stuff even more expensive. And I'll leave it there. Homelessness along the Front Range, down in Colorado Springs, up in Metro Denver. Homeless point-in-time counts indicate much different results between Denver, Colorado Springs. Commentary. Strange that communities around Metro Denver have had their homelessness decrease, while overall homelessness went up, almost like they were shipping them out of their cities and into Denver. While homelessness increased in the Metro Denver area, the numbers dropped in El Paso County, according to the results of a comprehensive survey conducted this year. The survey in major cities nationwide on 1 or 2 days each January highlighted a new crisis plaguing the Metro Denver, whose local governments, notably Colorado's most populous city, have spent significant amounts. Mayor Mike Johnson, who marked 1 year in office in July, had vowed to eradicate homelessness in his city. Within the first 4 years, has embarked on an aggressive campaign to house individuals. Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of The Wright Report. Thank you for watching The Wright Report Weekend Review with your host, Benjamin Wright. That's WRIGHT, Homeless News and Housing Policy the Right Way. Links to the reference articles available in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get notifications of incoming in-depth analysis of reports when they become available. Till then, we'll see you next week here at The Wright Report. That's WRIGHT, Homeless News and Housing Policy. The Right.